Hello, everybody. I'm Stephen Ruderman. Tonight, the Giants lose to the Cubs 5-2, but that is not the most important story in baseball tonight. Willie Mays died today at the age of 93, and I want to give my heartfelt thoughts here as we lose possibly the greatest ball player who ever lived. I mean, it's a toss up there between Mays and Ruth, but Mays was a 5 tool ball player, and he could He could hit for contact, he could hit for power, he could run, he could field, he could throw, he could do all of it. And he had quite a remarkable career. Just to kind of start off, came up started playing baseball when he was 16, 17 years old in 1948, first with the Negro minor league team, the Chattanooga Choo Choos, and then with the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro American League. And what's just so awful about this is the Giants and Cardinals are set to play a game Thursday night at Rigwood Field in Birmingham, where the Black Barons played, where the first ballpark, the first major league ballpark that Willie Mays called home. And the fact that he dies 2 days before that's devastating. We were all hoping. I was hoping he'd be there. He of course put out a statement yesterday saying he wouldn't be able to make it, but this is pretty devastating. So he came up in 1948, and then got signed by the Giants in 1950. Made his debut in May of 1951, right as he turned 20 years old. He went 1 for 32 in his first 7 games, and he was crying in tears, begging his manager Leo DeRocher to send him back to the minor leagues. Leo, he wouldn't oblige him. He made Willie work it out in the major leagues, and he did. Willie at 274 that year with 20 home runs. But Willie was very much a big part of baseball history that year. The Giants were 13 and a half games back of the Dodgers. And then again, this is back when it was just a World Series. You had 16 teams, 8 in each league, and you just had 2 pennant winners. That's it. You win your league's pennant in the regular season, and you go to the World Series. So this is also the golden age of baseball. You had 3 teams in New York: the Giants, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and the New York Yankees. And this, of course, was right in the middle of the greatest Yankee dynasty. It was the third of 5 straight world championships the Yankees had won, but the Giants were 13 and a half games back of the Brooklyn Dodgers in between games of a doubleheader on on Sunday, August 12th. And or no, they were 13 back on Saturday the 11th. For whatever reason, I thought they were 13 and a half back. But anyway, they won both games of doubleheader on August 12th against the defending National League pennant winner, the Phillies. And then the Giants went on a 37-7 run, I think, to tie the Dodgers. And back in those days, you didn't have your 1-game tiebreaker playoff. It was a best 2 out of 3. And so the first game was at Ebbets Field. Giants won that game. Second game was in the Polo Grounds. And so the Giants won the first game at Ebbets Field, Flatbush in Brooklyn. Dodgers won the second game at Coogan's Bluff in Upper Manhattan at the Polo Grounds. So game 3, October 3rd, 1951. The Dodgers took a 5-2 lead into the bottom of the 9th inning of that game. I'm sorry, a 4-2 lead into the bottom of the 9th inning of that game. The Dodgers had scored 3 runs in the top of the 8th inning. And Don Newcomb was still back out there. He had started that game. And Alvin Dark singled to start the inning. Don Mueller had another single. Monty Irvin fouled out. And then Whitey Lockman hit a double to left field that made it a 4-3 game. Or I'm sorry, a 4-2 game. It was 4-1 going into the 9th. And Bobby Thompson came up And Ralph Branca was the man summoned by the Dodgers bullpen. And then Bobby Thompson hit the famous home run, the most famous home run in baseball history, the shot heard around the world. And who was on deck for that? Willie Mays. Giants would go on to lose that World Series to the Dodgers, but what a rookie season if you're Willie Mays. So Mays, 1952, he gets drafted to go serve in the Korean War, which he did after the end of May through the rest of the 1952 season and all of the 1953 season. And his final game, they were talking about it on TV, was at Ebbets Field. And, Giants-Dodgers rivalry aside, despite the rivalry, despite the animosity and the booing of players on both sides, on the Dodgers side, as my dad is coming in, on the Dodgers side was Vin Scully. Everyone, didn't matter what team you rooted for. I am doing a live stream. Would you like to come in? Yeah. Didn't matter what team you rooted for. People loved Vin Scully. And Willie Mays was that for the Giants. Willie's last game in 52 was at Ebbets Field, as I bring in my dad, Rick Ruderman, now. The last game that Willie played in 1952 was at Ebbets Field, and he got a big standing ovation before he was set to ship off to Korea. So he came back in 54, and the Giants won the World Series. And, of course, he made the famous catch in deep center fields at the field of the Polo Grounds, over the shoulder.
Which center field, I believe, was 450 feet from home plate.
I think it may have been like close to 480, actually.
Or check it out. It might have been 510. I don't know.
It was a ridiculous amount of center field at the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I think it was actually over 500 feet, maybe. But it was close, if it wasn't.
It was, and Willie just made that catch and then turned around and fired a throw immediately back in. Anyway, the Giants would win that game on a walk-off home run. They had sweep the Cleveland Indians and win the World Series that year. Mays was with the Giants when they moved out west to San Francisco in 1958. And in 1958, it was an uncomfortable transition for Mays. Mays was beloved in New York, would play street ball with the kids and buy them ice cream. That's a true story. But in San Francisco, he ran into a lot of problems. There was a lot of racism. Everyone thinks of San Francisco as the liberal capital of the world. It wasn't that way in 1958. There was actually a lot of racism. Dad, you grew up a Dodger fan.
I grew up a Dodger fan, but I still loved Willie Mays.
But you were around during that time when Willie was struggling in San Francisco. There were zoning laws and...
Well, I was 4 years old in 1958, but I know that he tried to buy a house in Atherton and had a great deal of trouble buying a house because there were no African Americans in the area, and they didn't want to. I mean, they had racial covenants in those days. Neighborhoods. It was written into the sales of home, contracts that you couldn't sell to an African American. Some of them wouldn't sell to Jews either. They were written into the covenants of the property that you couldn't sell to certain people. So he had a really hard time getting a place to live in. It was a new community for him. But, the thing I was just talking to my good friend Kenny, because he grew up a Giants fan and, of course, worshipped Willie Mays. And we were, sharing from our childhood, just, it's, and I just heard from another, just got a text from another friend that kind of surprised to hear about. So people are reaching out to talk about it.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
People are really affected by it. A part of our childhood just died. It was part of my childhood. Willie Mays was a big part of my childhood. I saw him play live in Dodger Stadium. I cheered against him, but I still marveled at him and knew he was an incredible athlete. And the thing actually I remember the most about him was because I was watching the game when Juan Marichal hit Roseboro over the head with a bat, and Mays darted out of the dugout to help break it up. And I believe, and I'll have to go to the YouTube to see it, I believe that Mays even helped Roseboro into the Dodger dugout. So that was... He was a good man. Mays was a very good man. And he was a very, very smart baseball player. They say he had 5 tools. He actually had 6 tools because he had his brain. And not all players have that. you see some of these guys make some of the stupidest moves, like running mistakes on the field and things like that. And Mays was on top of every aspect of the game. The only thing he didn't do was pitch.
One thing that Mays would do is early in a game, he would strike out deliberately if it was not a big situation, if no one was on base and it was maybe 1 or 2 outs in the inning,
Two
figuring
outs, 2 outs,
2 outs, no one on base, and he would strike out deliberately. Why? Because those were the days where starting pitchers threw all nine for the most part. And he thought, let the pitcher think he has this out pitch with me. And then when I come up in a big situation in the seventh, eighth, or ninth inning, he'll throw it again, and this time I'll hit it.
Yep.
And that's exactly what he did. And Willie taught the game to Barry Bonds, because Barry Bonds, as great as he was also just a baseball genius. And Willie taught him all that.
Yeah.
But
well, the other thing he did running the bases is he also deliberately would slow down sometimes to try to draw a throw so the runner behind him could advance the base. So he might look back a little bit to calculate, to try to deke the outfielder to throw to try to catch him. If he's running home or something like that, he might round third and try to encourage the outfielder to throw to the plate so that the runner who just maybe hit a single, if Mays was on second, the guy who hit the single could take second base on the play. He was playing chess when he was playing baseball. So he was quite a talent, and he was a good man. So it's really, really a sad day for baseball.
Did Kenny reach out to you, or do you reach out to him?
I reached out to him. We're going to go catch a game, and you'll probably be up in the
press
box, and Kenny and I'll be out in the stands having a brewski, watching the Giants and sharing stories about Willie Mays. Probably that's what we were doing just now.
I got to meet Willie Mays. You remember that? You did not. Well, no. You did. You did. First, why don't you? Should I go first, or why don't I go first? Because I'll save yours for last. Because yours, I think, is a little more special.
Yeah, go ahead.
On Willie's 81st birthday, which was May 6th, 2012, Rick and I were at the Giants Brewers game. Hector Sanchez got a walk-off hit in like the 11th or 12th inning of that game. But anyway, it was Willie's birthday, and I was going to take a leak in the bathroom, sitting in Field Club, and down in Field Club, you get access to the stadium tunnel. So I walk back from the bathroom to my seat in section 124, and I see Willie Mays, and I stopped by, and I shook his hand, looked him straight in the eye, and I said, "Happy birthday, Mr. Mays." And he looked at me and said, "Thank you," and away I went. And that was a really cool moment. And I can say that I got, for a brief few seconds, got to meet Willie Mays' dad. I think, in 1964?
65, I think. It was in spring training. My mom, for my birthday, I asked my parents to take me to see a spring training game in Palm Springs. That's where the Angels used to do their spring training. And it just so happened they were playing the Giants that day. And we got Willie Mays' autograph.
Did you say anything to Willie? Did he?
I was too struck to say anything. My mom asked him for it, and I just stood there like just amazed that I got to meet Willie Mays. So anyway, it's not that big a story. It's just I got his autograph, and I don't know what the hell I did with it, which is a shame. But
And going back to the racial theme, they actually were mentioning a little bit on the Giants postgame show tonight that Alvin Dark was his manager. It was actually John Shea brought it up. Alvin Dark was his manager from 1961 to 1964. And Dark said, Shea, who was very close with Willie, said, Dark said some things that, could have been construed as racist, and probably were. I'll go a step further. Alvin Dark was a racist.
Well, wasn't he a Southern boy?
He was a Southern boy.
Yeah.
And apparently, according to Shea, that there was a potential planned mutiny in the clubhouse with Mays and the Alous. And apparently, I think maybe I heard this wrong, but he said that, and the Giants had the most diverse clubhouse in all of baseball at the time, and that Dark had forbid players from speaking Spanish. And
oh wow,
he was not a good man.
No,
that's what I thought I heard John Shea said. If that's not what he said, someone please tell me. But that was. Willie had to deal with a lot of that. 1965, Willie was 34. Dad, you and I were having this conversation a few days ago about how guys are declining sooner than they were back then. And Willie, in his age 34 season, won the National League MVP at 51 home runs,
Right.
probably his best season, and he was
Yeah,
34.
54 might have been his. He hit like 345, I think, in 54, and he hit like 40 some odd home runs that year. Yeah, I don't. I know he had an incredible year in 54.
But guys were able to play longer back then because they weren't working out the way that guys are working out today, and they weren't. The Willie actually was pretty ripped.
Well, he was a great athlete. He was a great football player. He probably played basketball too. I don't know. What was I going to say? There's a 2 hour. I think there's a 2 hour special on ESPN about him. I thought I saw that on the internet, but I'm not sure. And I know are the Giants or Arians or something's on the.
Yeah, they're airing Legends. They aired on NBC Sports Bay Area part of the Legends Willie Mays, which they did when Willie turned 80 back in 2011, and he had a big ceremony, and he had a big celebration in downtown prior to the game with Barry Bonds and a lot of dignitaries. And then that night they had a ceremony for Willie on the field, and he was honored. Last real public appearance we saw from Willie was his 90th birthday in 2021. We were just coming out of COVID, and it was May 7th because the Giants were off on May 6th, and they brought him out onto the field, and he was riding in that old Cadillac, whatever that thing was that they drive the all-time greats around in, and it was the last hurrah for Willie Mays.
It, what's I was talking to Kelly in Brazil. They had the famous soccer, and they call it football, but it's soccer star Pele. Have you heard of Pele?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and I said to her, Willie Mays was our Pele, because Pele was like the greatest soccer star in Brazil history, and they had, great soccer teams, and um, that was Willie Mays. He was one of a kind. That's for sure. Anyway, I need to go to bed, actually.
All right, I love you.
Love you too. Great show.
Thanks for being on.
Hey, anytime.
Who else did you talk to?
Oh, I got a message from Bob Varma. He was messaged me about Willie.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, any other, or is that it? Just
Kenny and Bob. And then, I talked to my mom too, because I was reminding my mom of all the ball games she used to take me to, and how we loved Willie Mays, even though we hated the Giants. And at that time, now I'm a Giants fan.
Everyone loved Willie.
Everybody loved Willie.
Yeah. What was people who watch my political show Unfiltered Opinions know I'm a staunch atheist, but I've always kind of jokingly talked about the baseball gods, though I didn't really believe it. But I couldn't help but feel somewhat spiritual tonight.
Death will do that.
Death will do that, and what I mean by that is why I mention that is that right when the news was announced 2 days before it happened 2 days before the Giants were set to go play a game at Willie's first major league park, Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama. But it happened when it was announced as the Giants and Cubs were in the top of the fourth inning. And it was announced as the Giants were playing a game in Chicago, one of just three major league baseball stadiums that Willie played in. He played at Wrigley, played at Dodger Stadium, and of course played in the second 1961 All-Star game for a few years. They had two All-Star games at Fenway Park. And
so no other stadiums are still
in Major League Baseball,
except for Dodger Stadium and
Fenway Park,
and Fenway and Wrigley.
So the Giants, when he died, were playing at one of the stadiums he played at. And Wrigley Field is known for its wind. If it blows out, it's going to be a high-scoring game. If it blows in, it's going to be a pitcher's duel. It was blowing out to center field tonight. And right as the news was announced, just a spectacularly beautiful sunset encompassed Wrigley Field. The clouds in the sky were painted orange. And by the time that they had paused the game in the middle of the sixth inning, well, not paused it, the last out at the top of the inning was made, and they did a moment of silence for Willie Mays, the entire sky was orange.
Wow.
And look, I'm an atheist. You're not going to get, it's pretty hard to pry a spiritual moment from me, but it's like, it's understandable. I'm sure that's a coincidence. If he wouldn't have died, the same things would have happened. But some people, you just can't help but think that this was the baseball gods painting the picture for us as Willie became one with them.
Yeah.
Tonight, Willie became a baseball god.
Well, he always was a baseball guy, but now he's enshrined forever as a baseball guy.
And it doesn't matter that he's 93 years old. This is really sad. But you can also say that at this point in time, at this point in your life, in some ways, death is a milestone because you've completed the end of an incredible journey. When my grandfather, your father, Milton Ruderman, died at 92, I congratulated him after he died, saying, "Congratulations on a great life."
Yeah.
And I would say the same to Willie, that he just had an incredible life. And 93 years is a hell of a life. Does it?
And he left a lot of wonderful memories in a lot of people's heads. That's for sure. He left quite a legacy, and he left a lot for a lot of people in terms of just not just entertainment, but um, how they look at the world. And for that, I greatly appreciate him. I mean, he was a huge part of my childhood. Huge part of my childhood. I mean, when I was a kid, that was my baseball was everything to me, and and it was also a lesson that here's a team he played on that I hated, but I always loved and respected Willie Mays, even despite that. So baseball teaches a lot of world's lessons. He was a good man. It's a very sad day.
It is,
And he'll be looking down at us with Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron and all the other greats. Um, Roberto Clemente. I remember the night Roberto Clemente died. That was a horrible night too. He died in that plane crash. That was shocking. Lou Gehrig, put him up there with that.
People in the world, we talk about, oh, that guy's a good person because he's really nice to people, and that guy's a jerk because he's an asshole to people. A lot of writers thought Roberto Clemente was a jerk because of the way he treated the media.
He was a proud man, and he was a great man. He did a lot of community
That's my
service.
point. Despite that, he died because an earthquake had just hit Nicaragua,
Right.
and he was over the holidays and around Christmas in 1972, and he was going down to deliver supplies, and his plane went down.
Well, and the other thing is the real assholes were the writers. A lot of those writers were major jerks.
And that's been the case throughout Major League history.
Yeah. Well, they're very aggressive, and also they were bigoted. I mean, I remember this from when Mays was playing. Like I said, he was playing chess.
And Mays had some problems with the press too, right?
I don't remember.
I know Bobby Bonds did.
Well, Bobby Bonds had a lot of personal problems. I mean, everybody has personal problems.
Well, the reason I'll tell you why Bobby had a lot of personal problems, because Bobby was playing in the minor leagues in the heart of the South at the end of Jim Crow. And and Willie, of course, had to go through this too, where he had whites only bathrooms, whites only hotels, restaurants, etc.
Right.
And with Bobby, it took a complete toll on him. But going back to what you're saying about Willie playing chess.
Well, when I was a kid, when you had a great African American baseball player like Willie Mays, the media said he always was playing by instinct. That's what they used to always say about the African American players. They were playing by instinct, and that they were great instinctive players. And then you had the white players who were really smart, and it was not very thinly veiled racism, but that's what was in the newspaper. That's what they said on the TV. They would say, "Oh, he has great instincts." This is the man who was doing things like deliberately drawing throws to the plate and calculating in his mind as he's running around the bases, figuring out just how quickly he had to approach home plate to draw a throw. He was a man who would take a strike three call with 2 outs in the first inning or third or fourth inning, just to set himself up in a later inning to be able to to hit that pitch because he knew it was the pitcher's out pitch, and they were saying he was playing by instinct. So he had to do, and he had to brush it off. I mean, that's insulting. When you're that talented and people are really insulting your intelligence, that's difficult
So
to
that's something I have to deal with.
you do. And it's very hard to brush it off, but he did. And that's where maybe a little different between him and Roberto Clemente, because Clemente had a more difficult time brushing that sort of uh, thing off because they said the same thing about Clemente. And of course, he was an incredible athlete and ball player and had the greatest arm I ever saw in my life. His ability to throw from right field was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So, baseball gives us a lot of great memories, and I wish it was the same sport as it was in the 50s and 60s, but it's not. I'm just an old geezer now, and we'll look back on those old days. Anyway, I
You
love you,
and yours out there,
Stephen.
I love you too.
Great
Thanks for
show.
coming on.
Oh, yeah, anytime. Invite me on your show.
Will do.
Yeah, we can. And check out Mays' average in 54. I think he hit 345.
Good night.
Or 340. I think it was 345. I want to see if I'm right.
Good night, Dad.
Good night.
Recruiterman, everybody. So, in 1972, the Giants had 14 straight winning seasons in their first 14 years in San Francisco, from 1958 to 1971. They had gone to the playoffs in 1971, in what was the year of the Fox. Charlie Fox was their manager. The Giants actually had a big lead, nearly blew it, and then Juan Marichal pitched a complete game or a shutout at Old Jack Murphy Stadium on the final day of that season to get the Giants in. And 1971, the Giants would end up losing 4 in a best-of-5 National League Championship Series to the Pirates. But anyway, in 1972, the Giants got off to a bad start, and the old core, they were aging. And so Willie Mays was traded to New York, where it all began. He would play his final, nearly last 2 years with the Mets, played the rest of 72 with the Mets, and all of 73 was involved in a wild play at the plate in Game 2 of the 1973 World Series. And that was... it was, got to end it where it started off for him in New York. And then he was actually banned from baseball because he had, business partnership. He and Mickey Mantle both had business partnerships with casinos. And as a result of that, Bowie Kuhn, who was a real fucking asshole, banned him from baseball. The ban was lifted, I think, in 1986 by Peter Ueberroth. And then the Giants brought him back into the organization. He would be around at spring training. There's that video of him working with Kevin Mitchell and catching balls up against the wall. Mitchell was traded to the Giants in July of 1987. And he stayed with the organization, and he came in while it was there when his godson, Barry Bonds, who would be in the locker room with Willie in the 60s with his dad, Bobby, and his godfather, Willie. And Barry came to play for the Giants in 1993 after 7 years with the Pirates. Funny thing is, Bonds was actually drafted by the Giants in 1982 out of high school, but he didn't like what he was getting paid, so he decided to commit to Arizona State, and ended up getting drafted by the Pirates and coming up with them in 86 and played 7 years there. But he comes to the Giants in 93. When Bonds was in college with Arizona State, when he was with the Pirates, other than his first few games with them when he wore number 7, he wore number 24 in honor of Willie. Now, the Giants, of course, had retired Willie's number, but Barry had wanted to wear that number 24, and Willie gave the okay for him to do it, but Bonds himself decided that it wouldn't be right. And so he decided to go with his old man's number 25. And so began one of the most exciting eras in Giants history, the Barry Bonds era. And Giants, of course, were headed out the door in 1992, the same situation the A's are in right now. Though actually it wasn't as bad as where the A's are at right now, because their move to St. Petersburg, Florida was never approved. But anyway, Peter McGowan and Larry Baer came in and heroically saved the team. And, one thing that those two did is they put an emphasis on the history of the Giants. And they, made Willie an even bigger part of the organization. And when they built their beautiful Jewel Ballpark on the corner of 3rd and King, what was originally called Pacific Bell Park, its address was 24 Willie Mays Plaza. It still is and always will be. And prior to the first exhibition game that the Giants had played there at the end of spring training in 2000, the Giants unveiled, I beg your pardon, the Giants unveiled a statue of Willie Mays that sits there and will sit there forever. And tonight, fans are going there to pay their respects, leaving flowers, candles, and notes, what have you. Um, and it was, of course, a very special moment when the Giants played their final game at Candlestick Park. Devin Cordova says, "We are sorry for the loss as a Diamondback fan. We are D, and I greatly appreciate it, my friend. One of my best friends, Devin Cordova. Devin's a big hockey fan. Like, would you say, Devin, that Wayne Gretzky, he's the Willie Mays of hockey? But anyway, Giants final season at Candlestick Park, which then was called 3Com Park, was 1999, and it was the tell it goodbye season. Lon Simmons' home run call. You can tell it goodbye, and they had a whole celebration all year. But then the final game of their final home game, the fourth to final game of the year, Gordie Howe is the best. And when did he play? Because I know nothing about hockey. When when the Giants played their final home game on Thursday, September 30th, the Giants would still play 3 more games in Colorado, in Denver against the Rockies. And Kyle Foster says Bonds was the reason I became a Giants fan. And if anyone wants to come on here, I can and talk about Willie Mays, share a Willie Mays story, or talk about why he and Barry Bonds have meant a lot to you. Hit me up and I'll send you a link. But in 1999, the Giants played their final game against the Dodgers. They lost it 9-4. And so after the game, they brought back all of the great Giants from their 4 years at Candlestick Park, and they kind of cheated a little bit and brought back some players from the first 2 years at Seal Stadium. No biggie. It's how we got to see Hank Sauer, and Hank Sauer had a huge nose, and Lon Simmons said, "I'll pardon you if you say, gee, isn't he cute?" when I introduced this next man, because Lon had a real dry sense of humor. And as Hank got older, he had the big nose. I remember in 2010, that ceremony was uploaded to YouTube about maybe 8 or 9 days after the Giants had won the World Series. That ceremony was uploaded to YouTube. And I remember seeing Hank Sauer and his big nose for the first time, thinking, now that's an old baseball player. But anyway, Willie and Hank Sauer were on that car together in the parade that went down Market Street, which, of course, 52 and a half years later, the Giants used that exact same route in the 2010 parade. Kyle says, and I was with my dad here earlier talking about I had a spiritual moment as well, and I say this as an atheist, and it's pretty damn hard to pry a spiritual moment out of this bitter cold atheist. But today was kind of able to do that. Kyle says he had his own spiritual moment. An hour before the passing was announced, saw a kid trying to make a Willie Mays catch, and I said, "That's no Willie Mays." Then the news got announced as you were driving home. It was on KMBR. For those who missed it, the spiritual moment. Anyway, actually, no. Let me talk about 1999. So they brought back all these players, and they all came out of the Giants dugout onto the field, and they introduced all these great Giants players, and they brought out the 99 team, and then they brought out the Hall of Famers, Lionel Cepeda, Juan Marichal. Unfortunately, Willie McCovey, who had already really been having knee and back problems since the end of his playing days, since early in his playing days, actually, and he just was in too much pain and had to go home. And another man who I miss, and Willie McCovey had such a beautiful voice. He really did. But anyway, they saved one player for last. And Willie came in from center field as they played the theme from The Natural. I think over 61,000 were in attendance at Candlestick that day, all to their feet. And Willie went to the mound and threw the final pitch, the final unofficial.
They're interviewing Giant players right now. Some retired Giant players like JT Snow.
They were already showing that.
He was all choked up.
Ken Griffey Jr.'s on that too. It's weird they haven't had Bonds on yet. Bonds might be. He may not be in a
He may not
position.
be in a condition to.
He probably doesn't. Bonds is a very emotional guy. He probably doesn't know condition to talk to anyone tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad they're doing it because people need this.
I might try if they even if I'm not scheduled to work the game where they do the ceremony. I might try and go to that.
Yeah, we maybe we'll both go.
Be a night game. We could stay at a hotel. Yeah, plan. Throw it all out there. Um, But anyway, Willie came out, threw it the last pitch, and they did the countdown from 24. Willie threw it with like 2 or 3 seconds left. And Barry was the one catching it, and then they handed the ball to an elderly woman named Marjorie Wallace, who was just someone who was around the team a lot during the days of Candlestick. She died in, I think, June of 2003. And then they played the 21st Century Fox theme, which was the theme they would always play at Candlestick when the Giants would hit a home run or win a game in the late 80s, early 90s. And then he was there in 2000 when they opened the park, and we had our moments with them. But Kyle, the spiritual moment, for those of you who missed it, and yes, baseball gods were able to pry a spiritual moment from this cold, angry, bitter atheist today. And there's a difference between it. Being agnostic means you really don't believe in organized religion, but you still have a spiritual side. My spiritual moment, and I think a lot of people had the spiritual moment, was when right after the news of Willie's death was announced, 2 days before the Rickwood game, he dies. And then right as it's announced, while the Giants are playing at Wrigley Field, one of just 3 active major league stadiums that Willie played at, that Dodger Stadium in the 1961, where Willie played in the second of 2 All-Star games back from like 1959 and 1962. They would play 2 All-Star games, the first of which in 61 was at Candlestick when Stu Miller was blown off the mound. Anyway, 2 days away from the Giants and Cardinals playing a game at the first major league ballpark Willie called home, Rickwood Field. Wind's blown out to center field at a ballpark that Willie played at. And right after Willie's death had been announced, a beautiful orange sunset encompassed Wrigley Field. Orange. As the sun painted the clouds and the light reflected from cloud to cloud. And by the time in the middle of the 6th inning, when they had announced it and held a moment of silence, the Cubs fans were cheering, which I didn't like. I mean, the thing was is that because they cheered when they announced it, and not like, but it's 2024. Everyone's on their phones. They knew what happened. I think they were applauding the fact that they were acknowledging it, but I was a little upset that I'm not gonna like lose sleep over it, but they could have kept it a little quieter during that moment of silence. Anyway, by the time of that moment of silence, the entire sky in Chicago was Giants orange. Almost a sign from the baseball gods that they painted that picture for us just as Willie became one with them. In the Star Wars universe, when a Jedi dies, they become one with the Force. In baseball, you become one with the baseball gods. And Willie became a baseball god tonight. And it was very spiritual. And the atheist in me is going to say that was just coincidence. And it probably was, but it's amazing how these things can sometimes happen. And so I found out in the top of the 4th inning, and what was weird. Ozarks is in our chat. I love the bald look. Walter White look. I don't know how much longer I'm keeping this thing, but I went to Instagram and saw that Barry Bonds had announced it. And I debated whether or not I was going to say something about this, but I do want to say it so yesterday they released a statement, and yesterday, whoops, uh, and Willie announced he wouldn't be there, and I can't. I admit that I couldn't I couldn't help but worry, is this the end for Willie? And I actually thought to myself last night, like, what if he dies on the day of the Rickwood game? Because I was just like, I just knew that when he wasn't going, and I get it. I mean, at Birmingham, Alabama from San Francisco was a long journey for a 93-year-old man, but I couldn't help but worry that Willie was at the end. Is Willie gonna die right when the Rickwood game, the game being played in his honor, is about to happen? And it happened 2 days prior. And now, going back to the story I told earlier about getting to meet Willie Mays, when I met him in that tunnel at what was then AT&T Park, I said to him, quote, "Happy birthday, Mr. Mays." And I made it a point to call him not Willie, but Mr. Mays. And I usually think a lot of that stuff is bullshit. Mr. or Mrs. I mean, it's not 1968 or 1958. But with someone who is royalty like Willie Mays, that's where you do call him Mr. Mays. And I called him that for two reasons. One, because he was royalty, and two, he was probably called every racial epithet in the book when he grew up as a young black kid in Alabama. And, that was just I just said, "Happy birthday, Mr. Mays." And tonight, I say, "Rest in peace, Mr. Mays. You'll always be with us." And as my dad said when he was in here, he created a lot of memories for a lot of baseball fans. I do think it is a coin flip. I always alternate between who I think was the better player, Mays or Ruth. But Mays was definitely, he and Ruth are definitely the two best. Because Willie, again, he everyone's, "Oh, that guy's a 5-tool player," and they throw that term around like it's paper. Actual 5-tool players are very rare. Barry Bonds was not a 5-tool player. Being a 5-tool player means you can hit for power, you can hit for contact, you can run the bases, you can field, and you can throw. Barry Bonds could not throw. He could field. He could field with the best of them, but Barry Bonds did not have an arm. Willie Mays was a true 5-tool player. And the brilliance of Willie, what he did, striking out early in a game with 2 outs and nobody on base, so he could get that same pitch later in a game. Deliberately slowing down to draw a throw so that the guy behind him could advance another base. The analytics nerds and baseball front offices today, they can't teach you that. Only real baseball geniuses like Willie Mays can teach you that. And the thing is about with Barry Bonds, I became a Giants fan in 2001, the year that Bonds hit 73 home runs. Bonds was a baseball genius, and he learned all that knowledge from his godfather, Willie Mays. And he was just so confident when he came to the plate. And he had that look of, "I'm going to throw me whatever pitch you want, man. I'm hitting that motherfucker out of the park." And pitchers would pitch around Bonds, but when they would throw that one pitch, a lot of times he didn't miss it. And he made you pay. And Bonds definitely, learned a lot of his knowledge on how to go about the game as a professional, how to be a big leaguer, how to, play the game on the field, what to look for. He learned all that from Willie. Now, one thing he um, also got from Willie was his surliness with the press, and Willie was surly with the press, and I don't fucking blame him one bit because this is back when the press was very racist. My dad and I were talking about this earlier, and Barry saw how the press treated Bobby and how they treated Willie, and that gave Bonds a very hard show around the press very early on in his career. Late 2000, damn, you beat me. Became a fan in 01. Truly became a knowledgeable diehard fan in the 02-03 offseason. The end of 2002. But, if Giants would always hold ceremonies for milestone birthdays. In 06, they held a ceremony on. Giants were not home on May 6th. So on May 12th, before their game against the Dodgers that night, Giants had an on field ceremony for Willie Mays' 75th birthday. Bonds walked him out onto the field. 2007 at the All Star game. He and Barry he walked in from center field together with both National League All Star teams lined up, and Barry left the scrum to walk to escort Willie through that little aisle between the lines of the two teams. 2011, they honored him for his 80th birthday. 2021, they honored him for his 90th birthday. He looked pretty damn good at 90. But Dwayne Kuiper, I forgot what exactly he said, but it was kind of funny, but it was true. It's like if you ever get a chance to honor Willie Mays, you're going to honor Willie Mays, even if he gets up to eat a bowl of cereal. You're going to give him a stand, something like that. You're gonna give him a big standing ovation. That's who Willie was, and Willie was a wonderful, honorable man, and he loved this game and had so much fun playing it. And he served in the war too. And big what if he doesn't? What do his stats look like if he doesn't miss those nearly 2 years? What a what a career, what a man, and what a life that Willie Mays lived. And even though I never got to watch him play in person or live on TV, getting to meet him, getting to watch the ceremonies, and just being a Giants fan and loving this team and having the connection of Giants history and him being the guy that mentored the man who was my hero as a kid, Barry Bonds, you feel it. And it really does. It really does suck that he is no longer going to be with us. But his memory, it will live on forever. I'll sit here for a couple more minutes, see if anyone wants to come on the air and talk. Um, 6-8. Oh my God. He died on June 18th, 2024. 6 plus 18 equals 24. Oh my God. But one thing's for damn sure: if I had a religion, it would be baseball. And there will only be 124 and 142. So that begs the question. In 1997, Bud Selig, uh, the then, well, not commissioner, but was the de facto commissioner, was chairman of the executive board, became officially commissioner in the middle of 1998, took the unprecedented step of retiring Jackie Robinson's 1942 league wide. I think there are two other men who deserve that honor: Roberto Clemente at his number 21, and Willie Mays, number 24. I think if Rob Manfred wants a good PR moment on Thursday night, he can announce that he, effective immediately, will be retiring the number 24. Or at the very least, like, if you're going to wear 24, you have to be someone who, like, really grew up idolizing Willie Mays. And you have to, like, maybe give a reason to why you should be allowed to wear number 24. And I think it might be time to do that. I really think it might. On the Facebook side, my friend Christian said, "You two should do this more often." Meet my dad and I. Of course, if you missed the beginning of this, my dad and I were on here together talking about this. Um, mm, but it's just what it is about baseball is the game must go on. Happened this afternoon, but it's announced in the middle of a game, and the game must go on. And that's exactly what Willie would have wanted. Game must go on. The history of baseball must continue to be written. New players, new great players will come up. But it's also why, because there's been a lot of debate lately, and I truly can't believe this is even up for debate, that today's players are the best of all time when they probably are the least talented of all time. And a lot of the, young bro types who love baseball, who love today's baseball, they show a lot of blatant disrespect to all-time greats like Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. And it sickens me to see them denigrate our great game like this. Oh, today's guys would kick their asses. Oh no, they wouldn't. It'd be the other way around. Everyone thinks today's baseball players are the greatest because I will admit they're the most athletic. But at the end, but they are the least talented. They are both the most athletic and the least talented players in the history of the game. Because of the one thing, and I'm going to use Willie's death to bridge this, because Willie was an African American who grew up from humble beginnings in Alabama. You don't see a lot of African American kids playing stickball on the street. Because if they did, good chance the police would blast them into oblivion. And so if you're poor, you can't really play baseball today. Even if you're playing stickball, you need all that training. And it costs a lot of money to get bats and balls and other forms of equipment. And the extra training sessions, they cost a lot of money. So if you're poor and black, or poor and white, or just poor in general, but demographically, African Americans are the poorest, good chance you're not going to be able to play baseball. And so really over the last 10 plus years, what we're seeing in terms of the American born players, which seem to be more white than they've been at any time since before Jackie Robinson, is basically we're not seeing the best players that America has to produce. We're seeing the wealthiest players that America has to produce. And that is why you're going to see a lot more players coming in from Latin America and from East Asia, because the fact that really only wealthy people have access to baseball now in America, and baseball has become incredibly classist. And the classism in America, the classism in Major League Baseball and throughout the game of baseball today, really is starting to rival that of the racism in baseball in the early days. And that needs to be talked about, because someone like Willie Mays wouldn't be able to play baseball today, most likely. I appreciate that. My dad taught me this game. There was no era, and that was the golden era. And today's players, they're the least talented but the most athletic. And Major League Baseball is open. Oh, we want athleticism. Athleticism is not what makes baseball great. Talent is what makes baseball great. And so my point being here is that baseball needs to be for everybody and not just for the wealthy in this country. Baseball is America's game. It's our game. And you're not getting the best players out of America. And again, that's why you're going to be getting more players out of Latin America. I think this past offseason was the beginning of, I think we're about to see a big surge of players from East Asia. Because as I said, the rich white players here, they ain't it. They're not the best players we have to produce. They're just the wealthiest players. And Willie had personality and just, and I talk about the lack of personality in today's game. You're like, well, what about those guys doing bat flips? Isn't that personality? No, slamming your bat and pounding your chest and screaming like an obnoxious asshole is not personality. It's phony, contrived bullshit. Personality means standing out, having a being unique, being funny, being entertaining. And Willie was just that. And they still do. And talking about the stuff that Willie did, nerds can't teach that. Just, yeah. And personality, Willie had that. Being unique, being different, standing out, being funny. Willie was all of those things. And the way he talked to people. So the way the say hey thing came out, and I learned this just tonight after he died, that his name is Say Hey because when people would say hi to him and he wasn't very good with names, he would say hey. He wouldn't say hey, he just said hey in his high pitched voice. And so he was dubbed Say Hey. Pretty cool. And Willie had to really had to deal with a lot. You know, as he was married, I think 3 or 4 times. His second to last, or his final divorce, second or third marriage. Uh, his last final marriage, final divorce, was due in large part to what was going on in San Francisco. I think it was John Shea saying this, that his wife was just felt under siege by all the racism in San Francisco, and he just wanted to ignore it and play baseball, and she couldn't handle that. And what I also saw about his last wife is she died of Alzheimer's in 2013, and she had actually been diagnosed in 1997, I believe. And being able to live 16 years with Alzheimer's, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Um, and Willie, from what I read, took care of her every day. Um, Imagine he loved her more than anything in the world, and he took care of her every day till the end. Um, it just shows the man he was. And we're all going to miss him. There's never been another Willie Mays, and there never will be another Willie Mays. I'm going to check and see if anyone wants to come on. Doesn't sound like that. So, with that, we're going to wrap things up. So, I'd like to thank Devin, Cordova, and Christian for stopping by to say hi. Kyle, thank you for being here. I'd like to thank my dad, my best friend in the world, Rick Ruderman, for being here. I'm Stephen Ruderman, signing off. Rest in peace, Mr. Mays, and have a good night, everybody. I'll see you soon.